Welcome back to the Gridiron Expert. Week 13 of college football was better than expected as we saw 7 teams in the top 25 lose, including 3 in the top 10 that assured us in the playoff committee into chaos this week. We saw number 1 Alabama lose on the road to number 6 Auburn in what was a pretty embarrassing performance by the Crimson Tide. We saw number 2 Miami lose on the road to 4-7 Pittsburgh, probably the biggest upset of the entire week. And then we saw number 8 Notre Dame lose on the road to a ranked Stanford team, a fairly good Stanford team who will now be playing in the Pac-12 championship game following Washington's defeat of Washington State. Notre Dame's slim chance of making the playoff is all but gone thanks to that loss there. But overall, we saw a great week 13. Starting on Thursday, we saw a great Egg Bowl between Ole Miss and Mississippi State. Mississippi State's quarterback Nick Fitzgerald going out with a gruesome leg injury, but the Bulldogs almost were able to come back and defeat the Rebels. They fell just short, 31-28. And then one of the most underrated games of maybe the year or maybe just this week, South Florida versus Central Florida, a 49-42 victory for Central Florida where those two teams scored 22 points combined in the final 2.5 minutes of that game. Central Florida won on a deciding game-winning kickoff return with just a little over a minute left in the game. So a very exciting game there. Overall, though, it was a great week 13. We're going to see what happens with the playoff rankings now. We saw 7 top 25 teams lose. Of course, now the season's over, the main focus now is going to shift to that probably top 6 or 7 teams to see who can finally slip into the top 4. We have some key conference championship games coming up starting on Friday with the Pac-12 championship. We're going to talk a little bit about those. We're going to show you how we did in our predictions this week in week 13. And now that we don't really have any teams trending up or trending down because the season's over, I'm going to give you my top 4 as of right now. And we're going to have to see if the committee agrees with that tomorrow night when they release their next set of rankings. And of course, we will have our playoff rankings video coming out on Wednesday. So we're going to jump right into it here. And we went 23-10 this week in week 13. Not bad. There were just a couple games where this record would have looked a lot better had a couple teams been able to pull it out. You know, I had Texas beating Texas Tech, and they blew that lead there at the very end. Arkansas had them beating Missouri. They only lost that game by 3. Had Mississippi State beating Ole Miss. They lost that game by 3. And I think had Nick Fitzgerald stayed healthy, not gotten hurt, they would have won that game. So it's a few games here and there that had I won, this would have looked a lot better, but about 70% winning percentage for week 13. That gives our overall to 386 and 126, which is above 75%, which was our goal. We have predicted over 512 games this season, which is very impressive. Now, keep in mind, there are 3 left, so I'm not making this official yet. There are 3 games left that we have UMass versus Florida International. We have Florida State making up their game against Louisiana Monroe. And then, of course, on December 9th, we have our Army-Navy game. 2 of those, UMass and Army, are independent. And then Florida State, of course. So now, as we do expect the outcome of the UMass and Florida State games we kind of know how those are going to end. But I'm not going to make this record official yet. Those 3 games will count towards our overall. So here about next week, we will have our official set record, official percentage. And we'll kind of go from there, and I'll break down the teams that I got correct on records or within one game. We'll break all that down next week. We just got to wait for these next 3 games to finish up. So I want to make sure everything's perfect, make sure everything's in line. Don't want to make anything look better or worse than they really are. But overall, 75% through 512 games, not too bad at all. Now, here are my top 4 teams going into this week, Conference Championship Week, and we'll talk a little bit about that. I've got Clemson at 1, Oklahoma at 2, Auburn at 3, and Wisconsin at 4. Now, some may say Oklahoma should be ahead of Clemson, and I disagree. After the Clemson performance this week, defeating a ranked South Carolina team, destroying them fairly easily on the road, I should add, I believe Clemson deserves number 1 spot. Oklahoma follows closely behind, taking care of West Virginia there. Auburn sitting at 3 right now. And I had them jumping Wisconsin because of the way they beat Alabama. That was just a very, very impressive win. It was at home, but defeating the Tide like they did, I feel they should jump Wisconsin, who has had a fairly weak schedule, has a few quality wins on there. If Wisconsin takes care of Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game, I might jump them over the Tigers, unless Auburn, of course, defeats Georgia in the SEC championship game. But this is my top 4 as of right now. And over here are the teams that are still in contention. Now, there aren't any certain order. This isn't 5, 6, 7, 8. No certain order. But this is who I have that's still in contention. I think everybody else would agree with that as well. Alabama, 1 loss to a good Auburn team, but they're not playing for the SEC championship game. Do they still have a chance to make the top 4? And I think they do if Georgia can defeat Auburn. If Georgia can defeat Auburn, I think Auburn drops out. And Alabama, who's probably, when the rankings come out, will hover around 5th or 6th, I would assume. I think they will be ranked ahead of Georgia. Has the chance to jump into the top 4 if Georgia can pull off the upset against the Tigers, who they've already lost 2 once this year. So it's going to be tough, but they're going to want revenge and probably the biggest game of the year for both teams. So Alabama still has that chance. They're still in contention. And Georgia, of course, if they win against Auburn, I think they're in. I think Georgia, I think the SEC champion is guaranteed a spot in the SEC, in the college football playoff. No doubt about it in my mind. And then we've got Ohio State, of course, and they've got a key game against Wisconsin in the Big Ten championship game. And I think the winner of that goes as well. You know, people are saying that Ohio State, with 2 losses to Oklahoma and to Iowa, which is looking like a very good loss right now, should they be able to make the college football playoff? And I think they will. They get that win over the Badgers. Of course, that would drop the Badgers out of the top 4. But Ohio State deserves a spot if they can get the win there. And then Miami, of course, people are saying, I don't know, after that embarrassing loss to a bad Pittsburgh team, does Miami deserve a spot in there? But keep in mind, their ACC championship game is against Clemson. I think if they beat the Tigers, I think they do find their way back into the top 4. They might be 4th, but they're still in. So I think your college football playoff top 4 is going to be the SEC champion, whoever it may be, Georgia or Auburn, the ACC champion, whether that's Clemson or Miami, the Big Ten champion, whether it's Ohio State or Wisconsin, and then you've kind of got that toss-up there. I think if Oklahoma wins over TCU in the Big 12 championship game, they're in. Which, of course, kind of throws Alabama is in a very difficult spot right now, and the committee is in a very difficult spot too. It's going to really come down to how these teams fare. Do they slip Miami back in if they defeat Clemson? Will Alabama be able to find their way back in the top 4? Would Ohio State potentially jump Alabama if they defeat Wisconsin? Would that look better for a team that won their conference championship compared to a team that didn't even play for one but only has 1 loss, and Ohio State only has 2 losses? So that is where the committee stands right now. They're in a very difficult position. These are really your top 8 teams right now in the country. This is my top 4. I think these guys right now would be in the playoff of the season we're in today, but we still have some key conference championship games left to be played that are really going to shape things up, and we will know our top 4 on Sunday, December 3rd, around 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock. So we will know our top 4 by then, and of course we'll have a video for that. But right now, my projected top 4, these guys are still in the hunt though, and it's all going to come down to these conference championship games that start Friday with the Pac-12 championship between USC and Stanford. So get ready for that. Please watch our playoff rankings video as well that comes out on Wednesday, and our conference championship preview videos that will be coming out around Thursday or Friday. So make sure you keep your eye out for that. Thank you for watching. Please continue to like, comment, subscribe, and we will see you next time on The Gridiron Expert.